In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to create the simple vector shapes required for this Avalon nameplate. We'll then take those vectors and walk you through creating some basic toolpaths, preview those toolpaths in a 3D simulation, and check to make sure everything looks okay. Once we're happy, we'll go through the simple process of saving those off, ready to send to your CNC machine. When we start any kind of job, we're going to need to create a brand new file. So in your software, you're going to look underneath your startup tasks and click on the Create a New File button. This will open up your job setup dialog. The first thing we're going to need to do is decide whether or not this is a single-sided job or a double-sided job. In our case, this time around, it's going to be a single-sided job. We're going to decide what our job size is, and in some cases, this will actually be the size of your material that you have or the material you'll be putting on your machine. We're going to go ahead and make this 7.5 inches wide by 3 inches in height, and then the thickness of this is going to be 1/4 inch thick. Now our units of measure are going to be inches. When we change our tool or when we initially zero our machine, we're going to be zeroing off the top of our material. We could zero off our machine bed, but in this case, the material surface is the better option. Now when choosing your XY datum, sometimes it's easier to choose the center when you're setting up your job. And then once you have it set up and you're ready to create your tooling to move it to the proper position where you want it to be. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to start in the center to lay out our job. And then once we go to the tooling, we're going to move that to the bottom left-hand side. Now we're just going to go ahead and click OK. Now we can go ahead and start creating the vectors for our layout. So under our Create Vectors options in our Drawing tab, we're going to click the Draw a Rectangle button. We're going to be presented with the dialog for all the parameters that we have when we're creating a rectangle. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose the anchor point. In this case, we're going to choose the center. That's the center of our job space. And we're actually going to tell it that by putting in 0 and 0 in here. And if we hover over the center guides of our job, you'll see that it's 0 zeros in the center. So when we create our rectangle, it's going to create the rectangle around that point equally centered within our job space. So we can choose our corner type now. We can choose a square corner, radius external corner, or radius internal corner. In this case, we're going to create a radius external corner, and the radius of that is going to be 0.15. The next step is we can set up the actual width and height of our rectangle. We're going to start with 6.8, and then the height is going to be 2.4 inches, and we'll click Create. That's perfect. Now the next step is we want to create another rectangle just inside of this rectangle. So the easiest way to do that, seeing as our Draw Rectangle dialog is still open, we can just go in and modify these parameters and then click Create to create a brand new rectangle. So in this case, it's going to be radius external corners again. We're going to make this the radius 0.05. The width is going to be 6.5 and the height is going to be 2.1. And we'll click Create. And now we have the two vectors that we need to create the border of our nameplate. Our next step will be to go ahead and create the text to go on our nameplate. So again, under our Create Vector section, we're going to click the Create Text button. And in the text box, we're going to type in the word Avalon, capital A-V-A-L-O-N. And you'll see that right in our 2D view, the text is already written out for us. It's not quite the right font we want, so let's take a look at our fonts. We have the option of choosing TrueType fonts or single line fonts. Now, TrueType fonts are any fonts that are installed on your PC, and single line fonts are the ones that we've actually installed to do single line engraving. So we don't want this particular font, so we can drop down our font menu and we can go ahead and find the font that we would like. We can scroll through if we want to, or if we happen to know the name of the font, we can just type it in. In this case, I'd like it to be Arial, so A-R-I-A-L, and it will go right up and you'll see that Arial's at the top of the list, and we can just click that. Now we don't want it to be bold or italic. We want it to be centered. And we know the height of this needs to be 1.3, but it's not quite centered in our job. So we have already set the anchor point here to 0, 0, which means it's actually going to be in the center of our job, but above the 0. So if we close this, we can easily move this to the center of our job by going over here to our Align Selected Objects. And you can tell that the Avalon text is selected because it's purple. We'll click that button. And in this top section, we're going to see Align to Material. So we can do it left to right, up and down, or to the center of our material. So we'll just click that. And it'll automatically center our text to the center of our material. And we can just click Close. Now that we have all of our vectors created, it's time to go create some tooling. And to do that, we need to access our Toolpath operations. The easiest way to do that is to go over here to your Drawings tab and click this button right here. On our right-hand side, you'll see our Toolpath options pop up. Now we can move back and forth between our toolpaths and our drawing commands by simply pressing that button whenever you want to move back and forth between the two. Now it's always important to check your material setup before you start creating any tooling. So let's just go ahead and do that. We'll click the Set button. Now these are all the options for our material setup. It's important that you check these to make sure that they're appropriate for your machine and the job you're about to cut. The thickness of material, that was brought over from when we first originally set up our job, which is accurate. Our XY datum, now like I mentioned before, we used it in the center to set up our job, but when we actually go to cut it, we're going to use our bottom left-hand corner. We'll click that. Now we can choose to zero our job a couple different ways. When we first set up our job, we chose material surface. At this point, we could change it to machine bed if we wanted to, but we're going to leave it the way it is. And now we need to review our rapid Z gaps. And these are the distance that our tool is going to move above our material before it does anything. In this case, if it's going to do a rapid tool movement, it's going to move up 1/4 inch above the material and then do its move. If it needs to do a plunge, then it's going to go ahead and move up 1/4 inch from the top of our material and move. And clearance pertains to what the distance is that you need to move to avoid anything like hold downs or parts of your machine that the tool can't hit, or maybe even a raised screw or something like that. Our home position is set to 0, 0, and when we start our tool paths, the machine will move to be 1/4 inch above our material surface before it starts cutting. If we're happy with all those, we can go ahead now and click OK. The first type of toolpath that we're going to create is called a pocket toolpath, and that will remove material between the word Avalon and this inside border. So to get started with that, we're going to go over to our Toolpath operations and we're going to select Pocket Toolpath. Now in order to do this, we need to have two vectors selected. We need to have our Avalon text selected and also this inside border. So if I hold down my Shift key, I can select this inside border. So now I have both of them selected. And you notice right off the bat that the Avalon text is solid color, or the inside border is a dotted line. And what this tells me is that the Avalon text is a group of vectors. In this case, it's still a text element, so I can edit it if I would like. And that this border line is actually one single closed vector. Now we need to check to make sure that our Show Advanced Toolpath Options is turned off. If it's turned on, just simply unclick the box and that'll all be hidden because we're not going to need those operations for this particular tutorial. Our start depth is going to be right at the very top of our material, and we're going to cut down into our material 0.1 inch. That'll be the base of our pockets. We don't have a tool yet selected, so let's just go ahead and select one of those. And this will pop up our tool database. Now this particular tool database has been populated with our default set of tools that was shipped with the software. But inside of this tool database, you can go ahead and add, edit, delete, or group together tools that you use often. Now we're going to use this to select a base, and then we're going to go ahead and edit that original tool for this particular toolpath. So if we select the 1/8 inch end mill. We'll be presented with all of the settings for that particular tool. We could change them here if we would like, but we're going to use this as a base, and we want every time we select this to be given these parameters to start with. So we're going to go ahead and select that. Now we want to temporarily edit that tool. So we're going to select the Edit button, and in here we can go ahead and change some of the parameters for our tool. In particular, we're going to go ahead and change the pass depth of this to be 0.05. We're going to make sure our step over is set to 20%. And our spindle speed is going to be 10,000 RPMs. Our units are going to be inches per millimeter. Our feed rate is going to be set to 60 inches per minute. Our plunge rate is going to be set to 10. And we're going to leave the tool number at 1. And this will only be changed if you have a tool changer on your machine and you need to indicate where in the tool changer this particular tool is. And we're going to click OK. Now I know that was a very quick overview of our tool database, but below there will be a related video about the tool database in particular and all of the ins and outs of it. Now we can choose how we are going to actually clear out our pocket, what strategy we're going to use. We have two different options. We have an offset strategy, which works from the inside and works its way out, or a raster, which goes back and forth and back and forth. For this demonstration, we're going to go ahead and use the offset strategy. We can choose what direction we want to go in, either a climb or conventional. We're going to choose climb as our default. Now we can go ahead and choose our ramp plunge moves if we would like. And what this option will do is, instead of our tool going directly into our material, it'll actually ramp in on an angle, and we can choose that distance of an angle. And this will help to alleviate any wear and tear on the tip of our tool. So we're going to set those plunges to be 0.5 of an inch. And then we can go ahead and name our toolpath. Typically, I like to name my toolpath with the strategy name and then also the tool size, so that we actually know that it's a 1/8 inch end mill. And then we can click calculate. As soon as our software is done calculating the toolpath, we'll be presented with a 3D view of our toolpath laid on top of a simulated block of material. Now you'll see there's lots of lines here. Let me go ahead and review what the colors mean. So the red lines are rapid tool movements. The blue lines are plunges or ramp moves. The green lines are retract moves. And the dark lines are actually your tool moving across or inside of your material, removing material. So let's go ahead and look back down, straight down on our material. Now we have all kinds of options in our preview toolpath dialog that we're presented with. The first thing is we can choose the material that we'd like our job to look like or be simulated in. So we can drop that down and you can choose all kinds of different things. We have lots of woods to choose from, lots of metals, we have stone. But for this particular job, we're going to go ahead and use steel bright. And then we can choose a color or an option or how we want the software to treat the area that is machined. In this particular case, by default, it's set to material color, but we can also use a fill color. So all of the areas where material is being removed will be colored yellow in this case. We can choose a color that's independent for each toolpath. That way you can go ahead and color each toolpath differently, and you can go ahead and save off that preview to send off to a customer. Or you can use our lithophane preview, which I'm not going to go over right now. For this one, we're going to go back to our global fill color, use the drop-down menu, and choose dark green. Our next set of options are animate our preview and also draw the tool. In this case, we want to do both. We want to see the tool move around our simulated material, and we also want to actually see the tool. So let's just go ahead and roll this up on its edge just a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and preview our selected toolpath. And you can see the tool moving around and the material being removed. And then the color of the area where the material was removed is now set to green. Now we have a look at that. We can make sure that everything is okay. At this point, if our preview does not look like what we expect it to look, we should go ahead and adjust our tooling appropriately. If it's not right in the software, then it certainly will not be right when it's cut on your machine. So you're going to want to make sure that what you see here is exactly what you expect to have your machine cut. Let's go ahead and look straight down on that again. And we're all done with that particular preview. So let's close that and we'll move on to our next toolpath. In order to select our vectors for our next toolpath, we're going to need to go back to our 2D view. So just click the 2D view tab. And this type of toolpath that we're going to make is called a profile toolpath. And this is going to be used to actually cut straight through our material so we can remove our sign from our material block. And to do that, we're going to select this outside vector. And then in our toolpath operations, we're going to go ahead and choose the profile toolpath. Again, we'll be presented with our 2D profile toolpath options. And we'll start at the very top and make sure that we have the show advanced toolpath options turned off. So our start depth is going to be 0. And one of the great features of your software is that if you don't remember the Z thickness of your material or the thickness of your material, you type in the letter Z and equals, and you'll end up being presented with the thickness of your actual material. We're going to need a tool, so let's select a tool. And in this case, we're just going to go ahead and choose the base tool of the 1/8 inch end mill. We're going to select that, but we're not going to make any edits to that at all. We're going to leave it just as is. We're going to machine our vector on the outside, but we also have the options of going on the inside of the vector or on the vector straight down the center line. But we're going to go and use the outside. We can choose the direction, climb or conventional. Again, we're going to choose climb. We can also choose to use some ramp plunge moves. And we're going to do that with the same distance we did before, which was 1/2 inch. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a vacuum hold down system on your CNC, then you probably aren't going to need tabs. And also maybe if you've used double-sided tape or some other method to affix your material to your table, tabs may not be needed. In my case, we are going to use tabs, so we're going to turn that on. The length of our tabs are going to be 0.15 of an inch, and our thickness is going to be 0.08, and we're going to edit our tabs. So we're going to go ahead and add in 4 tabs, and we're going to choose to add tabs. Now you can see the tabs in our 2D view, and these aren't exactly where I want them to be, so I can go ahead and left click on it, and I can slide it along my vectors and put them where I'd like them to be. I can also delete tabs by double clicking on them, and I can add one in by double clicking again. I'm happy with where those are, so I'm going to go ahead and hit close. Now we're going to go ahead and give our toolpath a name. Again, profile underscore 0.125 end mill will work perfect for us. And we'll go ahead and calculate that. And again, in our 3D view, you're going to see the toolpath that was created, and you're also actually going to see the tabs there as well, so you know those are there. Let's preview that visible toolpath, and we'll see what happens. Now again, be sure that this is what you expected to see. If not, then you need to go back and check your tooling, update it, and then recalculate and re-preview it again. Now, if you wanted to send an image of this off to a customer for approval, you can just go up to View and choose Save Shaded Image and save that image somewhere on your PC where you can find it, and then you can email it to your customers or print it out and show it to them. Now would be a good time to save off our tooling. So we can do that by clicking over here at our Save Toolpath options, and we'll be presented with our Save Toolpath dialog. In here we have a few options that we can choose from. First of all, we can output all visible toolpaths as one file. For now, we're going to unselect that. We can choose our post processor, and Mach 3 is one of the standard ones that's sent out with a lot of different machines. So we're going to go ahead and use that. But if that's not the proper post for your machine, then you need to look in the list and find your machine or controller listed and use that as your post. You'll see some of them have the letters ATC in it. That means that there's an automatic tool changer attached to your CNC. In our case, there isn't, so we're going to continue to use this Mach 2/3 post processor. Now we have the option of saving these off individually if we would like, or if they share the same geometry, we can go ahead and save them as one file, one toolpath that will run in succession on my CNC without stopping in between. Now, if you did happen to have a tool changer hooked to your machine, then you could potentially save off toolpaths that use different tool geometry as long as you have the right tool number selected for each tool. In my case, I want to output both of my toolpaths. I'm going to preview them both, and as I turn them on, you'll see they start to get listed here as one toolpath. And I can go ahead and save those toolpaths somewhere where I can find them on my PC, USB drive, or whichever method I get my toolpaths to my CNC. I can save that off. I'm not going to do that right now. And also, sometimes you have the option to output directly to your machine, which is perfect. If you can do that, then that selection is there for you as well. Well, thank you very much for watching this video.